Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Hour. It's Friday. We made it through another week. And Happy Hour is a way that, well, we kind of kick back, unwind, have some fun, have some laughs, have some drinks, be, well, simultaneously entertained and horrified by the cringe that is woke training all over the internet on Happy Hours every Friday at youtube.com/actively unwoke at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I pick out a woke training for us to watch, and it is a long form training, and we watch the whole thing from start to finish. We watch the boring bits, we watch the interesting bits, we watch the cringy bits. We have some cocktails or beer or sake sometimes on a special occasion, and we talk about what's going on in the training. Mostly, we learn from what the woke are doing and teaching, learning how to identify what they're doing, what they're really talking about, which oftentimes is not what the news says they're talking about, even right-wing media. They don't get it right. And we know what's going on because we actually see what they're saying and putting out there in the real world. And, we make fun of it too, because that's what we do. Now, today, we have an extra special training. I have been threatening to do this for a minute. Fat Studies is back, baby. If you have never sat through a Fat Studies presentation, trust me, you are about to embark on a journey of absolute, unparalleled insanity. I have dabbled not just on Happy Hour, but just out of my own curiosity in the realm of Fat Studies. And do you know what I've discovered? That almost every single person who teaches fat studies or fat activism in some way is also an amateur porn star. I'm not making that up. Their Instagram accounts are filled with things that I cannot unsee. And sometimes those Instagram accounts of these legitimate professors in academia, most of the time, sometimes those Instagram accounts lead to their Pornhub accounts. And it's one of those things. Listen, man, I'm not saying like it's like an accident. It's like an accident. You see the link there, it's right in front of you. You're like, I can't not look. I can't. This is too crazy. You start going down the fat studies rabbit hole, you will end up on Pornhub at some point and you will see things you do not want to see. I have been more traumatized by fat studies than any other realm of the critical theory umbrella. And it's one of the areas that, like, critical race theory gets a lot of attention right now, and so they've really had to temper down the crazy. They don't put out stuff now that is nearly as crazy as what they did, like, a couple of years ago. It used to be way more insane. Fat Studies has not yet had that tempering down. In fact, it's actually really hard to find Fat Studies content. It's why I don't do it very often, also because it's really cringy and usually bad. And, so I don't know. I don't know what we're in for today, but buckle up, kids. And I'm telling you, if you drink, and it's perfectly fine if you don't, not everyone needs to partake. Some people are sober. That's a respectable position. But if you drink, just take the next couple of minutes while I'm doing the introduction to the show. Go pour yourself a beverage. You will thank me later. I promise you, you're going to want that beverage. It's true. I have 4 beverages myself. I'm not going to be drinking all of them on the show, but we're going to talk about what they are, and you guys get to pick out what one I start with. But before we get into the beer that I have, I just want to do a couple of other things. Number one, if you want to support the work I'm doing, well, you can send in a super chat. Of course, all super chats do support the channel, and of course, I appreciate them. But the very best way that you can support the work I'm doing is to become a supporter in my locals community, because this is what keeps these streams coming, guys. It is what it is. Without the help of my local supporters, I would not be able to spend time doing this. And so if you enjoy the work, if you have been to several different happy hours, or if you watched other streams that I've done on my main channel and you would like to contribute and support that effort, please head over to kb.locals.com/support and you can sign up as a member and get some extra perks. You can sign up for $5 a month or more. if you want to. All you need to do is change the number if you want to add more, but you don't have to. It's not required. You can also sign up for $50 a year, which will give you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift, and all of those things does help to support the work that I'm doing, and I really do appreciate it. And I try to offer my local supporters lots of bonuses and perks and all sorts of good stuff because they are my community. They keep me sane, and I'm extremely grateful that they allow me to do this work. Even when we watch Fat Studies presentations, I'm still grateful that my local supporters are the ones that keep it running. No, he's not, Sarah. No, Matt Walsh is not talking about cameras in classrooms again. Are you making that up, Sarah? Of course he is. Of course he is. Of fucking course he is. You know what? We're not going to worry about Matt Walsh right now. Matt Walsh can shill and grandstand to his heart's content. We all know who came up with cameras in classrooms, and it wasn't Matt Walsh. We all know who has done actual activism regarding cameras in classrooms, and it's not Matt Walsh. We all know who wrote a book that has a whole section dedicated to cameras in classrooms in it, and it's not Matt Walsh. Oh, speaking of the book, there is indeed a whole section about cameras in classrooms in my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. In that section, I lay out the case for cameras in classrooms. I also help you to dispel every single objection that you will get to the idea, because I vetted all of that shit on Twitter weeks before Matt Walsh stole my work and passed it off as his own. It is all available in my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. That book is available in hardcover. That book is available in Kindle. And I also want to make sure everyone knows it is available as an audiobook, recorded by me. I read the whole thing. I didn't want to. I was forced into a position of having to, but it came out great, and I'm really happy about it. And I just want to read you one of the reviews that it got just the other day. We're going to read this review from Angela. Angela, thank you for leaving a 5-star review on audible.com. She says, "This is an excellent guide. Karlyn provides thoughtful and actionable insight to help us as we fight to keep America a free country. She is open and honest and provides us with the strength to stay in this fight by providing tools. I looked for this to be on Audible for months and was pleased that she took control of making sure the book was read with the passion she has for the subject. Excellent narration. Thanks, Karlyn." Thank you, Angela, for getting the audiobook. Guys, if you have not yet checked out the audiobook for Actively Unwoke, I strongly recommend you use one of your free Audible credits and pick up that book today. And again, that does help support the work I'm doing, and I really appreciate it. One last thing before we look at my beer selection for today, I did want to let you guys know that I will be hosting an event with Gabrielle Clark in a couple of weeks. It is called Overcoming the Effects of the Gender Cult: Desistance from ROGD, which is Rapid Onset Gender Dysphoria. Gabrielle is going to, for the first time to the public in this format, deliver a training for parents whose children have been indoctrinated into the gender cult in their schools, and she is going to teach them how she deprogrammed her daughter from this horrible ideology that taught her daughter that made her daughter believe that she was trans when she is not. And listen, we don't believe in conversion therapy. I don't really care if you're trans. I don't care if you're non-binary. However, the schools should not be convincing children that they are trans when they are not trans. Because cis lives should matter as well. And you know, conversion therapy is bad when conversion therapy is done to legitimately trans people or gay people. I don't support that shit at all. But it is also bad when it is done to convince children that they are something that they are not, paid for by the state, when they are compelled to go to public schools. So this is a really important event. I'm really excited about it. If this is not something that directly applies to you right now, please help us spread the word about this. Please help us spread the word about this program. If you have anyone who has kids in school, if you're a parent yourself, I promise you are going to want to watch this. Even if you think this isn't affecting your family yet, you are going to want to watch this training, because one of the things Gabrielle's going to talk about is the signs that she saw that her daughter was being indoctrinated in the schools. because this can sneak right up on you. And if you don't pay attention, if you don't know what's going on, it really is one heck of a problem to unwind. So the landing page for this is activelyunwoke.com/events. We are charging for this. It's not very much. We're charging $20. The reason that we're charging is we are delivering this on a private webinar platform that costs a lot of money. And essentially, so we are making sure that parents and people attending the webinar have their identities protected by delivering it on a private platform. It's not going to be delivered on Zoom. It's on a third-party platform. But it is expensive to actually do this stuff. So that's one of the reasons we're charging. Number two, we only want people at this event who are serious. So when you do stuff like this, what happens is they bomb the registration. So they fill it up with fake registrations, or they fill it up with people who are just going to troll by charging even just a little bit. And again, we're charging $20. So this is not breaking the bank for anything. Even by charging a little bit, we dramatically cut down on the hassle that we have to experience on the back end of administering a productive event for everyone. So that's why we're charging. And I frankly have no shame about it. I think I would probably be charging for a lot of stuff I'm doing moving forward. It just makes things so much nicer. Listen, like, people pay for things they value. Don't ever feel guilty about charging for something. I feel like I provide enough free content at this point that I have a license to charge for a thing or two here or there. So that's going on. And please, again, share the word, guys. It's activelyunwoke.com/events is going to give you all the information for it, and you can register today. All right. Now the important part, the fun part. Let me show you the beer I have for today before we get into the presentation. Now, of course, you guys know that I always start with the beer that you tell me to start with. So we're doing a poll. I always get 4 beers, even though I usually only drink 2 of them. And probably will not drink it much more today. But I like talking about the beers because it's fun. The first beer we have, I had to get this one because it's called Sparkle Bomb, and it's a sour ale, and I liked that it was called Sparkle Bomb, and it had a fun can. And this is brewed with raspberry, sweet cherry, lime, sea salt, and glitter. Apparently, there is glitter. Glitter. I don't want to weight the poll too heavily, but there is glitter in this beer. Glitter. Okay, so we're gonna call that the glitter beer. I'm not saying that I'll be upset if you guys don't vote for that one, but if I had to guide you on the path, it might be the glitter beer. The next one I kind of thought this beer was like, this beer can, it like embodied me, to be honest. It's called Hard Rain, but rain as in a queen. I thought that beer can embodied me. And this is a blackberry imperial sour. This is blackberry beer. And then I decided to get a couple of stouts because I was actually in a stouty mood. And the first one I got is called Toasted. Actually, this is a porter. This isn't a stout. This is a porter, which is usually a little bit like lighter than a stout. And this is a porter with marshmallow. So we're going to call this the marshmallow beer. And then the last one, hang on, where's my mouse? There it is. All right, the last beer that we have is got a green moon on it, so also a good can. So many good cans tonight. And this is called This is called Nightcap Snack. And this is an apple pie strawberry cup imperial stout with strawberries. So basically a dessert stout. Strawberry. All right. Poll is in the chat. I'm not saying that I want you guys to vote for the glitter beer, but I'd really like you to vote for the glitter beer. Because I'll show it to you. I want to see what the glitter looks like, okay? I'm impatient. Why don't you guys want to see what the glitter looks like? I feel like this is like a fun activity for everyone. I'm just going to keep campaigning for this beer until you guys give me what I want. I don't normally campaign for beers. Normally I'm like, whatever. I'm like, if you fuckers don't vote for that glitter beer. I never ask you guys for anything. All I want is to drink the glitter beer. All right, it looks like you guys are giving me my wish. Everyone's voting for the glitter beer. Not everyone, but 72%. Okay. Thank you guys for indulging me. I'm ending the poll because it had like an overwhelming majority. Let's take a look at the glitter. Now, if this beer doesn't have fucking real glitter in it, I'm gonna be so mad. I'm gonna be like, all that buildup and no glitter. All right, let's see what it looks like. I don't know if I'd call this glitter. Oh, there is glitter! There is! Oh, it was light. It got mixed in really quickly. I definitely saw glitter though. All right, maybe not as maybe not as exciting as I'd hoped. Not as exciting as I hoped. Let's see. But a delightful beer. I wanted that glitter so bad. I wanted like an extra glitter. All right. And Justin says he's having a sour beer with glitter called Unicorn Farts. Very good, Justin. Very, very good. All right, guys, now that we have all of that out of the way, let me get up our Chrome tab. Hang on, gotta get this set up right. And we are watching today Fatness, viewing Fatness through a social justice lens. I kind of feel like Alex needs to come and do a prayer so that we all make this through with our sanity. But I believe in all of you. All right, I'm blessing all of you. Let's get started.
I'm going to go ahead and get started. So this presentation is on viewing fatness through a social justice lens, particularly in the context of higher ed. And my name is Luke Killian, he, him pronouns. I'm a master's student in the higher ed program at UNCG. Okay, so just a warning at the very beginning, the presentation has a lot of content and plenty of it can be raw because it's dealing with oppression of fat people specifically, but other intersecting identities. If this is something you're not able to be here for today, I have a couple of introductory slides.
I think I've learned how to turn up the volume on Chrome. I just want to, hang on. Oh God! I'm sorry, I paused. I'm sorry. I was about to tell you guys very interesting and exciting news that someone notified me that there is a Chrome browser plugin that allows me to turn up the volume in the browser so we don't have these volume issues anymore. And I was just turning up the volume of the presentation to make sure that everything was hunky-dory. And then as soon as I paused it, oh God! Let me just hang on. Let me just screenshot that. I'm gonna tweet this. I'm gonna be like, this is going well. Yes, Vampire King Darkness, thank you for letting me know about this plugin. This is the first time I'm using it. I was so excited about using the plugin that I didn't realize that I was, you know, about to hang on, let me just tweet this real quick. I'm gonna tweet it with the link. I'm gonna say this is going well so far. Oh my God. I just shouted when this came on the camera. Well, this is going well so far. What I tell you guys is always universally. Okay, let's keep going.
Here's what we're going to talk about today. Like I said, brief introduction. Then I'm going to talk about some sources of where fat stigma comes from. Then I'll talk about examples of what anti-fat discrimination looks like, and then move on to moving forward and what this looks like in our field. So just to start, my position, I am not a fat person. I'm a thin or straight-sized person. So just to establish that I don't personally experience this type of discrimination. I will include some fat content creators at the very end if you want to check them out for some more information. I've been studying this topic for about 9 years now. I came to size acceptance and body justice through being a transgender person and struggling with the relationship to eating.
He's trans. He doesn't look trans. He doesn't sound trans. I don't know if I buy that. Straight sized.
And just a note on language.
I should write my next book about fat. The Wonderful World of Fat Studies. The Wonderful World of Fat. That's going to be my next book. The Wonderful World of Fat Activism.
So I use the word fat a lot
God.
in this presentation. That is purposeful. I'm trying to normalize its use as respectful, descriptive language. I'm going to avoid euphemisms like curvy or big boned because those are offensive. But I do want to acknowledge that the word fat can still carry shame.
Why is curvy and big boned offensive? Why is calling someone curvy offensive, but calling them fat is not offensive? That doesn't make any sense.
Some people, but I want y'all to kind of know why I'm using it. So here's some questions to start. In a context of higher ed, I just want us to think about, do we study retention rates for fat students? Do our institutions include weight in their non-discrimination policies? And do our campus climate surveys include body size as a variable? Why or why not? In my experience, the answer is usually no. So I'd like us to think about that as we're going through this presentation. Okay, sources of fat stigma. This unfortunately needs to be a very surface level gloss due to the time we have. I'm going to touch on some historical background, scientific misconceptions, and then how our current culture reinforces these beliefs. I'm focusing on Western culture because I believe that that is the origin of a lot of what we see in terms of size discrimination in the US today. Not saying that other cultural backgrounds are less important, but I think this is more relevant to understanding this particular discrimination. So with Greek culture, you see
hang on. Lone says curvy is fat in all the right places. I mean, is maybe that why they find it offensive? Is that it's like more proportional? I don't know.
Separation of body and soul, but specifically the body is seen as undermining the best efforts of the soul. Ancient Greek culture also developed this four humors concept. We see it then tied into racist science in the 1700s. So the belief was that if there was an excess of black bile, it caused both dark skin and body fat. So this is the beginning we see of this dichotomy of black equals fat and white equals thin. Bile theory also combined with cranial theory at the time, and it posited that white skulls with a receded mouth and advanced forehead indicated white people were designed.
Wait, are they saying that did they just say that black people are fat and white people are thin? I need to go back and listen to that again. I'm sorry. I do not understand the point he's making with like white is thin and black is fat.
Specifically, the body is seen as undermining the best efforts of the soul. Ancient Greek culture also developed this four humors concept. We see it then tied into racist science in the 1700s. So the belief was that if there was an excess of black bile, it caused both dark skin and body fat. So this is the beginning we see of this dichotomy of black equals fat and white equals thin. Bile theory also combined with cranial theory at the time, and it posited that white skulls with a receded mouth and advanced forehead indicated white people were designed to think rather than eat. More so than that, you're seeing this construction of the bodily need to eat as primitive and uncivilized. So the mind was seen as the master of the body, morally superior, closer to God, with white people as the race most capable of reason. By the time we get to the so-called Enlightenment, these sort of divine superiority concepts are replaced with, heavy quotes here, objectivity. So Amy Farrell wrote
These
a book
people
called
don't believe in
Fat
objectivity
Shame that I really appreciate, and she says, within the political, social, and economic upheaval of the 19th century, new justifications for the vastly unequal hierarchical arrangements and oppressions emerged to replace the old ones. The rising institutions of science and medicine now provided objective evidence of natural inferiority among women, the poor, and colonized people. I say this because as we get into modern medicine and science, it's important to understand the historical basis of using these fields to justify discrimination. And this is what I believe is the thesis from Amy's book. She says, the fat body, I argue, became seen as unable to manage the modern world precisely because of its association with inferior bodies or to use the language of obesity experts of the time, the primitive, the abnormal, and the uncivilized.
Okay, let me see if I understand this. Okay. Let me see if I understand this. Science in the 1700s posited that Black people are more likely to be fat than white people. And therefore, in modern time, 300 plus years later, the fat body is seen as inferior because science 300 plus years ago said that the Black body is more likely to be fat. So today, the fat body is more likely to be seen as inferior than the white body because racism. Did I get that right? I mean, they're saying here that it's seen as inferior. I don't know. I think that's correct. Does anyone else have a different interpretation? I'm honestly asking. Vampire King Darkness says, when wondering why curvy and big boned are offensive, I realize these are also the people who get mad in a debate and pull the most malicious string of insults to pull down their detractors. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Emily, this is a great point. Science also thought the world was flat. I mean, some people still think the world is flat. I can't confirm or deny that Dan Smots might be a flat earther from the Hitler went to hell chat that I still haven't posted yet. Some people still think it is. Those people are obviously wrong. But I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure that's right. Okay, racism strikes again. Always about racism. Can't we just talk about fat people without talking about racism? Don't fat people get their day?
So this is to say that the interconnections between racism, sexism, and anti-fatness.
Oh, hey, Waylon. Waylon, do you guys know who Waylon is? Waylon is a pedophile. I have Waylon's arrest record. Waylon, should I pull up your arrest record right now so we can see your arrest record? Because I can pull it up right fucking now, my friend. Actually, let's just do that. Since Waylon decided to troll my chat, sorry guys, we're going to take an interruption. This is Waylon's arrest record. And you can see, actually you can't because I covered it up, but you can see here that Waylon was convicted of molestation of juvenile in Louisiana. And this is actually this person. This person has been stalking me on the internet for probably over a year. He is connected with that horde on Twitter. And Waylon likes going around and reporting me and stalking me because he's pissed off that I found his fucking arrest record and outed him for the pedophile that he is. Fuck off, Waylon. He is now blocked. Thank you. Thank you for humoring me with that interlude. I appreciate it.
Run deep. So let's bring it more current. The obesity epidemic, I'm sure we've all heard this phrase. The terminology war on obesity is attributed to C. Everett Koop. He used to be a Surgeon General, but after he was a Surgeon General, he got involved with the Shape Up America campaign. And it's through this campaign that he made this announcement of his war.
Yeah, for everyone that complains that I block them, they're going to play, how dare she block a legitimate pedophile whose arrest record she found? How dare she? Yeah, okay. 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 I did pull out his arrest record like Clint Eastwood pulls out a gun. You know what's funny? He actually used to have a Twitter account with that name, Waylon Brew, and he used to stalk my replies like all the time, even after I blocked him. And so eventually I just Googled him. I was like, who the fuck is this asshole? And it wasn't even hard to find. And I found his arrest record and I posted his arrest record on Twitter. And I was like, this is the guy that's stalking my replies. And within 5 minutes of me posting his arrest record on Twitter, he had deactivated that account. Anyway, let's move our attention back to fat, shall we? Thank you.
On obesity. It is worth noting that Shape Up America was sponsored with at least $2 million from Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig alone. He also worked with researchers to publish work that supported a claim that obesity killed 300,000 Americans a year. And this is something that at least I've seen a lot. It's similar statistics. Obesity kills 300,000 people a year, it kills 400,000 people a year. These are very alarming statistics, and I want us to talk about where they come from. So, on the one hand, it comes from the Shape of America campaign. The CDC also published a similar statistic in '04. They said obesity-related deaths were 400,000 in the United States per year. When they published this report, it drew a lot of criticism. There's scandal behind why the report was created that unfortunately I can't get into, but the backlash prompted an internal review, and the CDC had a whole new set of authors, better methodology, newer data, and they reduced their estimate by 94%, which is pretty severe. So this wasn't a small, oh, oopsie, we didn't get quite all of our data right. This is a massive change in the estimate of how many people die from weight-related causes. The BMI, we have all heard of the BMI. I want to talk a little bit about where it comes from. So it was created by Adolf Quetelet, who notably was not a doctor. He was not a scientist, he was a sociologist, and his formula that he developed is the same
Wait,
one
hang
that
on,
we use
hang
today.
on, hang on, hang on. You're ragging on people for not being real doctors and being sociologists instead. Do you guys know that? Do you hear? Okay, so he just said, well, the person who developed the BMI, he was not a medical doctor, he was a sociologist. Now, I'm not deflecting from that point at all, but what is ironic about that point is that these people come from sociology departments. We're talking about like social justice. They come from the sociology departments. So if you're saying that sociologists are not qualified to do something, guess what, dude? You are giving an entire presentation called Fatness Through a Social Justice Lens. The social justice activists come from the sociology departments. So if they're not qualified to do this thing, how many other things are they unqualified to do?
For the BMI. The formula has not changed at all. So when he created it for the purpose of identifying what he.
That doesn't necessarily mean that I think the BMI is perfect, by the way. I don't actually think the BMI is a perfect measure, but it is just ironic that, sociologists. Oh my God. Oh my word. No, this dude is probably a sociologist.
Called the perfect person or the average man. So this wasn't about judging individual health. It was about looking at statistical averages with racist motivations. So here's a quote from Quetelet. He says, quote, "If the average man were completely determined, we might consider him as the type of perfection, and everything differing from his proportion or condition would constitute deformity or disease or monstrosity." Which is very strong language. So he was basing his measurements on white men, and that's what he deemed as the correct person. Everything else was disease or monstrosity. This formula was adopted around the 1980s in the United States, but notably in 1998, it was changed. The cutoffs were changed. So today, the cutoff is 25 BMI is overweight, 30 or higher is obese. The cutoff was actually higher before 1998. The reason they changed it, this did not have scientific or medical motivations. I mean, of course it couldn't, because the BMI is not based on science. So it changed because the United States
Neither
National
social
Institutes of
justice,
Health, their
dude.
obesity task force was pressured to align with the World Health Organization, who had lowered their cutoff to this 25. The reason WHO did that was from pressure from the International Obesity Task Force, which I could not believe this was a real thing. It sounds like a comic book, but it's actually there. The International Obesity Task Force was founded and funded by Hoffman La Roche and Abbott Laboratories, which are weight loss drug companies. So the reason that
that's actually
you
interesting.
are
I will say
classified
that.
as
Listen.
overweight has less to do with science and medicine and more to do with this chain of political and economic pressure.
Okay, that might be like, we have to offer when a valid point is made. And it is a valid point to say that the NIH obesity task force was driven by the diet pill companies. That is a fair and valid point to make. And that can be a fair and valid point, regardless of how absolutely effing insane the rest of like social justice and fat studies is, that's a fair and valid point to say that the NIH was probably driven to do this effort by lobbying because of the diet pill companies. Because I mean, they force medication on people all the time, so why wouldn't they use trickery and lobbying to sell this diet medication? So that actually does make sense to me. That's not to say that I think that that is necessarily indicative of anything else in this presentation being right, but I mean, we have to admit that government dietary guidelines are not good. If we're honest, like the food pyramid is shit. The food pyramid is like it is such bullshit. It tells people to basically eat all carbs, and that's not healthy either. So we can offer a rare valid point when a valid point is made.
So I want to talk about this concept we have that obesity is increasing at epidemic rates. So here's a report from Harvard from, I believe, 2020. And they say that in 1990, obese adults made up less than 15% of the population in most of the US. By 2010, 36 states had obesity rates of 25% or higher. So from 1990 to 2010, we're seeing this 10% increase in obesity in the population, but seems quite alarming. In 1998, the cutoff for the BMI was lowered so that overnight, 10% of the population went up in a category. It seems to me like there's a connection here. The report makes no mention of it. It's very rarely discussed. The report goes on to say, while US obesity rates have overall stayed steady since '03. I want to pause here because how often do we hear obesity rates have overall stayed steady for over a decade? That's not what gets publicized. We hear more of the panic, it's increasing at exponential rates. And then they kind of gloss over that and move on to, but disparities persist in non-Hispanic, Black, Hispanic, and Mexican American adults. Well, the formula was measured off of white men. So of course disparities exist for populations that are not white. And the final thing I want to point out about that is if you see this US News
So
and
again,
World
they're saying
Report
that this is
graph,
about racism. Do you
I
hear
just
that?
want to point out that on the left side of the graph,
Do you hear that? He said, well, the measurements were taken off of white men, so of course it's not going to apply to people who are not white. So again, they're really trying extremely hard to make the racism argument in conjunction with this. So again, like it's all about just like how many oppression points can I add up? How many oppression points can I accumulate across intersectionality?
we see the numbers go from 30 to 42, not 0 to 100%. So the graph has been specifically manipulated to make obesity rates look like it's a more severe increase. We fight obesity not because obesity is inherently a problem, but because fighting it is lucrative. These are my words. So the US diet and weight loss market is worth about $72 billion every year. Okay, so scientific misconceptions. On the right here, I have some common myths or beliefs that we have about weight. They are that overweight and obesity lead to early death, overweight and obesity lead to disease, we're gaining weight at epidemic rates, weight loss improves health and longevity, you control what you weigh, anyone can keep lost weight off if they try hard enough, thinner is more attractive, and we can trust the experts to provide accurate information. I've already gone over two of these, the we can trust the experts myth and the epidemic rates myth. We'll touch on a few more of these, but I do want to point out that these are beliefs, they are not facts. Okay, so this is probably where I should have started my presentation. What even is obesity? The quick answer is that it's complicated. It depends on what studies you look at, but
It's
there are
not
as many as
complicated.
6 to 59 different types of obesity. And when I say types, I'm talking
59
about the web of factors.
are they turning obesity and by the way, guys, this presentation was on March 5th, 2021. So this was a little over a year ago. So it's relatively recent, but not like it's not 2022. But like 59 different types of obesity is like obesity the new gender. And I do agree. I actually do agree with his point that I do think that that the weight loss market is, does drive a lot of things. I actually do think that's a valid criticism. Now, that's not necessarily to say that I don't think that people should celebrate going to the gym or any of these things, but like the gym can be ungodly effing expensive. And like all this stuff, like to adhere to a certain image can not be attainable for a lot of people. And so again, like I actually do think there are valid arguments to be made in this area, but that's not to say that you should be encouraging people to embrace inherently unhealthy lifestyles. And I say that as a woman that's not thin. I'm not. Um I don't think you should be actively encouraging people to engage in unhealthy lifestyles by saying like all of this stuff is just a myth and it's just about fueling the diet industry. Well, I think there's an argument to be made that I do think that there are companies that do try to take advantage of people's insecurities in order to make money. And I also don't think that there is anything wrong with people feeling good about themselves, regardless of what they weigh, by the way. You should feel good about yourself, regardless of what you weigh. Like, who the fuck cares what other people think? But to say there are 59 different types of obesity, that seems a little bit of a stretch. Seems a little bit of a stretch.
That have resulted in that person's body size, whether it be genetics, hormones, stress, etc. And we don't really have a good way of measuring body fat. The BMI is about 50% accurate, so we don't really have a way of defining that in a doctor's office conveniently. Again, kind of continue, body weight is complicated. It's influenced by more than 100 factors with 300 interconnections between these factors. A lot of studies that have looked at adults who were adopted or twins have concluded that weight is about 70% accounted for by genetics, which means that your body size is more heritable than almost any other condition, including breast cancer, schizophrenia, and heart disease. So kind of going back to this idea of you control what you weigh. Does dieting work? I would say yes, in the sense that it grosses billions a year. I would say no in terms of like long-term change in your body size. So about 90 to 90% of people who lose weight on a diet regain it within 3 years. And
I mean, that's true.
aware, this creates this pattern of what we call weight cycling. So you diet, you lose weight, you gain it back. You diet again, you lose weight, you gain it back. Yo-yo dieting is...
But that has to do with habits. That has to do with habits. Because what happens when Gavin, we're not doing this in my chat. Just turn off the caps locks, dude. Turn it off. Just relax. Turn off the... I know you're excited and I know this is crazy, but just like turn off the caps locks is all I'm asking. It's like, do we want to keep it nice and chill, man? Keeping it chill. Only I'm allowed to yell, okay? What was I saying? I mean, it is true that like people do yo-yo diet, but like what happens a lot of the time is that people basically transfer their addiction to food over to like addiction to the gym or like an addiction to something else. So it's about the addiction, and it's the addiction that they haven't conquered. They haven't gotten over that yet. They've just transferred it to something new. And so like there are other reasons to explain why people might gain weight after they lose a tremendous amount of weight. It's mostly about diet and habits and not actually dealing. What's going on, I think, is that they're not dealing with the innate cause of their overeating to begin with. Dude, like, listen, I know that I overeat to comfort myself. I know that I do. Well, okay, I wouldn't even say like I overeat, but I eat the wrong fucking things. I will admit to that. I eat the wrong fucking things because drinking beer and eating pizza gives me comfort, okay? When I have to do this fucking job in which I'm attacked all day, every day. And so if I can get some comfort food and some beer that I enjoy at the end of the night, I'm happy about that and it makes me feel good. Now, in order to cure that, I would have to go and do freaking psychotherapy or whatever on like the deep unseated cause of why I allow people on the internet to get under my skin. But I can do it. I can do it. But I know that it's not about just like going to the gym or doing any of these things if I want like long-term weight loss. And I would say the same thing to anyone else. Like eating food is like it's called comfort food for a reason. It makes people feel secure. It makes people feel good. There's even spiritual concepts that say that people who hang on to extra weight, it's literal padding. It's a defense mechanism. It's to keep bad energy out. And so, like, if you're not dealing with the underlying psychological causes, of course it's going to come back. Of course it is.
connected to negative health outcomes. So a few of the side effects of weight cycling would be an increase in all-cause mortality, an increase in cardiovascular disease mortality, and an increase in coronary heart disease mortality. I think it's interesting to note these are the things we usually blame fat itself for and don't really critique, like, what are the social pressures put on fat people and how might that result in behaviors that create some of these outcomes. So this is just sort of emphasize again, 5% is how many people who succeed in maintaining weight loss over about 5 to 10 years, which is pretty low. I think because weight loss is so ineffective and dieting is so ineffective that there are a lot of marketing strategies used to still sell the products associated with it. So these are just a few marketing strategies I'm pointing out. One would be just renaming it. So it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change, or it's not a diet, it's biohacking, or it's really about the weight, or it's really about your health. The weight loss is just an awesome side effect. These are all diet and weight loss products that have just been repackaged. One technique is blaming individuals. So that's what I have the picture over here, kind of like a pull yourself up by the bootstraps, like this idea that the widespread failure of diet and weight loss strategies.
I will say this, like the emphasis that the right puts on weight drives me absolutely insane. It really does. It's like, my God, they really think that image is all that matters, and they really think that all people need to do is go spend 4 hours at the gym a day and get on a keto diet, and that'll fix everything. And I know that I mean, I see someone in the chat talking about the keto diet, like, and I know it works. I know people who are on the keto diet that love it, that swear by it. They eat pork rinds all day as a snack, which apparently pork rinds are totally keto. Which, you know, if I were going to do the keto diet, pork rinds would probably be a staple of my diet too, because pork rinds are fucking delicious. They're really good. And apparently they have no carbs in them, which I had never even thought of before. But that doesn't mean that a human being is worthless because they're skinny. And it's like, or excuse me, because they're fat. And it's like, I really don't understand why the right goes out of their way to attack people based on their body, because it's like, dude, that's a vote for you. That's someone that could vote for you. Have you seen your own constituency, conservatives? Because I've been to several Trump rallies and a lot of you are fucking fat. Like, why are you constantly making fun of people because of their body? It just doesn't make sense.
Strategies is clearly because the 95% of people
Yeah,
just
Brett,
didn't
I
do the
hadn't
right
thought of it,
thing,
okay? I just
but
hadn't
will
thought of
sell
it.
you the real miracle cure, or
It
they
hadn't
didn't do the
occurred
right
to
thing
me they'd be
correctly.
low
They just didn't
carb.
try hard enough. One technique is to lift up the exception. So for the people who they do keep the weight off, or the people whose weight was mostly influenced by lifestyle factors, we hyper focus on those people and say, well, they did it, so why shouldn't this apply to all the rest of the 95% of you?
I've tried doing the keto diet before, and I've thought about trying again. I have. I've thought about trying again. I tried before. The last time that I tried it, I was really tired all the time. I was cranky. But I think I only gave it like a week or two, and I was like, F this, like I'm tired all the time. Fuck this. I can't do it anymore. I think I gave up pretty quickly, and I have actually thought about giving it another try, especially since discovering that pork rinds are totally keto, because they're delicious. They're delicious and they're really filling.
And then finally, just grand promises. You can lose weight in a few days, easy and fast. My sort of litmus test that I got from a podcast that I'll share with you guys is that if we actually found a way to safely lose fat quickly, easily, and over the long term, the news would be everywhere. Like I'm talking Newsweek, New York Times, Associated Press. So if you're only hearing about it in
Oh,
Women's Magazine or
he
on
thinks
Dr.
that
Oz, it's a marketing strategy. It's not real.
oh, he thinks that the news covers real news. Oh, isn't that cute? Thinking that the news covers real news. Hey, Fran, it's good to see you. He thinks the New York Times covers real news. Okay, fun fact. Did you guys know today I saw an article in the New York Post that said Six Flags strands customers outside in heat as their system to sell tickets like broke or something. So apparently people at Six Flags in New Jersey were waiting outside in a long line because Six Flags couldn't open to sell them tickets, and the news headline was like Six Flags strands people outside as they can't open on time. And I was like, these people were planning on being outside all day anyway. They are going to a theme park. The whole point of going to a theme park is being outside all day anyway. Did they not know it was going to be hot? Why did they pick that day to go to a theme park? It's not as though being outside waiting in line to get into the theme park is significantly different than being outside when you are in the theme park. It is the same. So can you really say that they stranded? They also could have gotten in their cars and gone home. Like, no one forced them to wait in line at the Six Flags. This was a legitimate article in the New York effing Post. I was like, this is the state of journalism today. I know that has nothing to do with fat studies or weight. It just really, I was like, journalists suck. Journalists suck at their jobs. They legitimately suck at being journalists. They have literally one job, and that is to report the news and keep people informed. And they're like, people had to wait in a line at Six Flags. It's like, people spend all day waiting in line at Six Flags. That is the whole purpose of Six effing Flags, unless you buy the Fast Pass, and then you get to go to the front of the line, which, by the way, you should always buy the Fast Pass. It is so much better than waiting in line for an hour and a half to go on a roller coaster that only lasts 30 seconds. So stupid. So stupid.
And then sort of a caveat really quick, I just want to acknowledge that there are barriers to choice. When we talk about like, why don't you just choose to get thinner? There's a lot more than goes into that. So we could talk about systemic social barriers, having the financial means to
fatness.
hire a nutritionist
Systemic
or anything
fatness.
like that. And also, I mean, the USDA exists for a couple reasons. One of them is promoting agribusiness. Sometimes what's best for agriculture is not what.
Let me tell you guys this, and I know this does not have anything to do with the presentation. This is just how happy hour goes sometimes. If you've never gotten a fast pass at Six Flags because you're like, it's so expensive, it is 100% worth it. You can go on so many more rides with that fast pass. You go right to the front of the line. You can even get an option where you get to sit in the front, like you get to ride twice in a row. It is, if you're going to spend all day at Six Flags anyway, get the Fast Pass. You will not regret it. It is a life-changing choice. I know it's expensive. I know it sucks. But it is so worth it. It is so worth it.
Is best for public health. So, you know, choice is not trivial, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Fatness has been historically constructed as antithetical to personal and societal advancement. Fatness represents greed, disease, racial inferiority, reframed also.
Here again, they're saying again.
We rarely give fatness the respect of being considered an oppressed social identity. We just view it as inherently inferior. So when we fight obesity and fatness, what is it exactly that we are fighting? Okay.
Oh God.
Culture. So here's a photo series I really.
All right. Well, we're looking at a fat person hugging a giant penis. Please mount that like button. You're not mounting the like button for the fat person hugging a giant penis. You're mounting the like button because I'm showing you this craziness and we're all in it together. Okay. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We do this every Friday. Normally there are not naked fat people in the presentation, but I told you guys, what did I say at the beginning? Most fat studies people are also amateur porn stars. I told you. It does look like a giant penis to me. It really does. I'm pretty sure that's a giant penis.
Love by Lakan Ogumbanwo, where she's juxtaposing objects similar to fat bodies with a fat human body. I think it's what I like about it is it helps us challenge what it is about fat inherently that we object to, because we have these objects that are not coded as human body. Okay, so Dr. Cooper in 2007, she pointed out what's called the headless fatty phenomenon. I bring this up just so those of you who haven't heard of it before can kind of keep your eyes out when you see imagery of fat people. So she noticed with a lot of the like obesity epidemic news and blogs, there would be pictures of a fat person who was seemingly photographed without their consent or knowing they're being photographed and their head's not in the picture. So sort of thinking about what function does this picture serve? So it's like, in my opinion, it's exploiting a fat person to push a message that harms fat people. But an activity that might be, I mean, I've tried it and it's very telling. If you try to Google search for an image of a fat person, try to find one where you see their face and they're dressed nicely. They're not depicted as a joke. They are not exercising and they're not eating or pictured with food. So I might recommend trying this in your free time. Can you find a picture like this? And how easy was it to find a picture like this? And if you do, how fat is the person in the picture? TV and movies, of course, like not a good story. Fatness is used as a metaphor for pretty much any failure, societal failure, personal failure. Fat suits are very commonly used. The problem with fat suits is that not only are we not paying an actual fat person to play a character, and more, I'll share more on the fat earning gap later, but you're paying a thin
The
person in a
fat
fat suit to
earning
portray a
gap.
stereotyped caricature of a fat person. And reality TV is also a mess, which doesn't surprise anybody. I mean, we have shows like The Biggest Loser, My 600.
Listen, man, I'm sorry. The Biggest Loser was a great fucking show. I used to, okay, back in the day, I used to work out like a lot. I really wanted to lose weight. This was like back circa like 2008, 2009. I was in the gym or working out like 4 hours a day. And that's excessive and you shouldn't do that. But I was like, I was trying to get in shape because I wanted to run a marathon. I really like, I wanted to run a marathon. That was one of the things I wanted to accomplish, and I knew I needed to be in shape to do it. So I was just working out all the time to lose weight so I could run a marathon. I've since run 3 and lots of half marathons, and I will never run a marathon again because I just don't know if I can put myself through that again. But the thing I want to say is this. I used to go to the gym and I would bring my iPad with me and I would just watch The Biggest Loser. I would like sit on the treadmill and I would like walk or I would run on the treadmill with The Biggest Loser playing. And it was incredibly motivational because I was like, if these people can survive the hell that they are being put through by these trainers, I can sit my ass on this treadmill and finish this workout. And it was incredibly motivational. And like you see, like they're so proud of themselves and they're doing things they never thought they could do. So the fact that these people are saying The Biggest Loser is like a bad show, and I understand there were some shady things going on. I get it. I do. Like, you know, in terms of like diet or like what the trainers were doing, like no one's perfect. But for me, that was a really inspirational show and I really liked it. And I actually, fun fact, I actually ran the 2015 Boston Marathon with a Biggest Loser contestant. He was on the marathon team that I was on. So, and he did it. He did it. Yes, well, they did well, and this is there were problems with that show, right? There were problems with it. Like, let's not front. There were absolutely problems with that show and how they were training people and what they were doing. But in terms of people like taking control of their life and doing things that they never thought they'd be able to do, as a viewer, I found it really inspirational and it helped me. It helped me get into shape. It helped me be able to run several marathons, you know? And my 600-pound life, I mean, come on, my 600-pound life is just, it's cringe. It's so cringe. It's so cringe. It's, if you guys have never watched my 600-pound life, I feel so bad for some of those people. I really do. I really do feel for them.
Pound life. I think these are popular for a couple reasons. People will tune into them to pity fat people or marvel at the physicality of very fat bodies, like a circus sideshow, elevate themselves through comparison, and reap the satisfaction of watching fat people suffer from and reject their own.
No one is forcing anyone to go on TV. Let's just be clear. No one is forcing anyone else to go on a reality show. If you don't want to go on a reality show, it's really quite simple. You don't sign the papers to go on the reality show. You don't agree to go on the reality show. Oh yeah, it's gonna be a good day for bodies. Yo, yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Fatness. I think there's this condescending pleasure in watching fat people's journey. These shows sell because they play into our negative beliefs about fatness. Okay, so let's talk about examples of discrimination. I've been talking a lot, so I'm gonna take a drink of water. I'm sorry, this is a mile a minute. It's like a fire hose, but I tried to cut it down. The mistreatment of fat people should be called discrimination and not motivation. I think shame is a poor motivator anyway, so I'm arguing that the real seed of our critique needs to be our systemic and social discrimination towards fat people, not fat people themselves. Here's what we'll go over in this section. The graphic I've included, that's from Ash of the Fatlit podcast. She created this to illustrate
Oh, I'm
that
a
the
small
size a
fat.
person
Excellent.
is will impact the discrimination they experience. So these aren't supposed to be immutable categories, but more to say that
Good to know.
there's some difference here. I wrote down some common stereotypes of fat people. There are some that are obviously nasty, like greedy, unhygienic, lazy, sloppy, miserable, lonely, gross. And then there are some that seem nice, but are condescending, and I would argue just as harmful, like fat people are jolly, they're unambitious, they're simple-minded, stupid, funny, that sort of thing.
Well, hang
So
on.
I'm not going to
I
play
wanna,
this video.
I wanna play on something Caleb said. And Caleb, this is not picking on you at all. I understand why you're saying it. Caleb says being fat is negative. You should have negative beliefs about fat, but love yourself enough to get fit so you can live your best life. I disagree with that, Caleb. You can live your best life now. You do not have to be a certain weight to live your best life. You should be happy now, at whatever size you're at. It doesn't matter. These people want to fetishize fat people. For as much as they want to say like that's what the reality shows are doing, these people want to fetishize fat people. Just be happy with where you're at right now. If you want to lose weight, then fine. If you don't want to lose weight, that's fine too. But just don't blame anyone else for your problems. And don't blame anyone else for where you are and what you're able to do because of how much weight you're carrying. But yeah, I think this is about fetishizing fat people more than anything else.
Video, but I included some quotes that I pulled out from it. It's a good example of arguments and rhetoric that position thin as better, and that this should be the goal for everybody. So in order for an argument like this to work, you have to position fat people as one of three things. Either they are ignorant, they just don't understand what to do to get thin. They are impotent, they're trying to get thin, but they aren't good at it, or disobedient, they're just willfully doing nothing and staying fat. So I have two quotes from the video that I think illustrate some of these points. So the woman in the video, she says, quote, "When I see overweight people and obese people, I do try to give them the benefit of the doubt. I know that there are people out there that are trying to be healthier. I know that they do care, but they don't know what to do." So this idea of they just don't get it. They're just ignorant. If they knew better, they would be thin. Then she says, quote, "I don't hate fat people. I want to help them become healthier," which to me goes to the impotent piece. Like, I need to help them. They need my help to get thinner. They can't do it on their own. For me, these ways of framing fat people infantilize them. So they're an object to be pitied and not an adult with full agency. But I think they're easily accepted because they call up these stereotypes of fat people as stupid, incompetent, lazy, or lacking in self-control. So what's the impact of weight-based bias? And here's a couple of different studies that are specifically looking at what are the outcomes of discrimination based on weight. Some examples I wanted to pull out would be increased blood pressure, stress, binge eating, symptoms of depression, decreased motivation for exercise. As mentioned, shame is not motivating, decreased quality of life, that sort of thing. I think what is interesting about these is, again, these are things that we tend to blame fat itself for. You're depressed because you're fat. Your blood pressure is high because you're fat, and we're not looking at the confounding variable of discrimination. Specifically on social contact, researchers have found that individuals with large bodies elicit strong feelings of disgust and a strong desire for increased social distance among individuals with thin bodies. This is particularly salient for us, I think, during COVID-19, because we've all experienced touch deprivation and the stress from that to some degree.
All right.
So this is, I think, one aspect of me bringing this up is that if we harbor beliefs that are negative about fatness, if we have feelings of disgust towards our own or others' fatness, we can't really hide that in a professional setting with a student. You may think that you can put on a professional
What?
shield, but I don't really believe that that's the case.
Wait, did he just say that if you hate fat people, there's just no possible way for you to behave professionally around people who are fat? That's not true. I mean, first off, I don't think anyone really well, okay, I actually do think that a lot of conservatives hate fat people, or they just really I don't know. I don't know what their deal is. But it's perfectly possible to behave perfectly appropriately around someone even if you don't like the way they look. It's perfectly possible. Lots of people do it all the time.
And I included a small sampling of microaggressions. Of course, there's more, but here's just a few. Um, let's see. One would be like talking negatively about your own fat or weight gain. So, like disparaging jokes about the COVID-15 that you've gained. What that communicates to other people is that you're trying your best to not look like anyone in the room who's bigger than you are. And one would be like unsolicited advice of any variety. So, like words of encouragement given to a fat person exercising. The assumption there is, of course, you're exercising to get thin because that's what you're supposed to do. And go you trying to look differently than you do now.
Or it could just be congratulating someone for exercising and saying good
Okay, and
job.
I included some what I would consider blatant examples of anti-fat bias. There's really low representation of fat people in media or history that's respectful. I think an example would be like President Taft. The only thing we know about him is he got stuck in a bathtub. We don't really know that he's like the only person to hold the highest offices in the judicial and executive branches of government. Um, Denial of right to adopt was something that really shocked me. So something that does happen is if a fat couple is trying to adopt, the assumption is, well, look at your size. You obviously don't know how to take care of yourself. So how could you take care of a child, and not letting those people adopt? Here is examples of objects, physical spaces that are communicating on a very tactile level. You don't belong here, right? So furniture, chairs of almost any kind, seating of almost any kind, a lot of medical equipment. So blood pressure bands are the wrong shape and they tend to give inaccurate readings, things like that. In education, fat students show no statistically significant differences in intelligence or achievement test scores, yet receive significantly lower grades in middle school, community college, and university after controlling for demographic variables, intelligence, personality, and well-being. So to me, this is the stereotypes of fat people as lazy, incompetent, and stupid seeping into grading practices. And employment is also not good. So fat people are less likely to be hired than thin people, regardless of qualifications. This is particularly seen in people-facing jobs. So the thinking from the company being, well, your appearance doesn't really represent us well, so we're not going to hire you for this front desk position. Lower starting salaries, being ranked as less qualified. So people make negative inferences about fat people in the workplace due to these negative stereotypes, and these stereotypes of laziness, lack of self-discipline, and being less competent, they are shown to impact wages, promotions, and disciplinary actions. And things that are more expensive. I have a list of things here. Something that I wanted to underline was healthcare. We often talk about how taxpayers are paying more for the healthcare for obese persons. So people classified as obese are estimated at spending an extra $1,400 per year on medical spending. The assumption is, well, that's because you're less healthy because you're fat. And the increase in medical spending is likely due to a complex blend of factors. So some doctors will refuse to see patients above a certain BMI, which forces people to go out of network, which is expensive. Often doctors will ignore a fat patient's symptoms and just chalk it up to obesity, which forces them to seek second opinions to find a correct diagnosis or someone who will take them
Hang
seriously.
on. Doctors ignore symptoms for a lot of people. It's not just fat people. Doctors ignore symptoms for a lot of people all the time. And I've never heard of it. Has anyone ever heard of a doctor denying someone did not not refusing to see someone specifically because of their weight? because that to me seems made up. That does not seem I don't know that I believe that that's actually happening in any sort of significant way.
And fat patients are also more likely to avoid going to the doctor due to stigma encountered there, so they often don't get care until problems have developed into something that's more expensive. All of this to say, fat people have more in common than just weight. So when we look at data about fat people, it's worth considering these confounding variables, not just, oh, there's a negative outcome, it must be because you're fat. All right, I wanted to talk about fatness and morality. I think this is the last part of this section, and then we'll go to the moving forward
Oh
section.
god.
So this for me, it's a little more than just thin is good, fat is bad, although that's part of it. I wanted to talk about the natural body. Um, I think some anti fat rhetoric calls on this romantic idea of an archetypal human, or this idea that if we all just ate and exercised the way our ancestors did, we would all transform into like this Paleolithic, toned, thin white man, which is just not real life. I have nothing against paleo or raw diets. I'm sure they have benefit. I think culturally, the appeal of them relies on framing fat bodies as representative of packaged and refined foods, and that's the real issue in my eyes. So, in other words, I believe that fat people represent our anxieties about the dangers of a modern industrialized world. So, similar to the medieval South or Make America Great Again, these are
What?
nostalgic movements that rely on rosy notions of the past to relieve anxiety about
Did you
change in the present.
notice? He just slid "Make America Great Again" in there. So this relies on nostalgic moments of the past, like "Make America Great Again." Like, what the fuck, dude? Do you think? Do you understand that Trump supporters are probably more likely to be fat than Biden supporters? Those are like your people, dude.
And kind of to continue on that point, and I also hear this as a transgender person, lots of arguments about some bodies being more natural. And I think that's a way of framing an opinion as a fact. So it's not just me that thinks this body's unnatural, it's just how nature's supposed to be. So you're kind of pushing the responsibility for your opinion away from yourself. And then there'll be a lot of like, well, this is just genetic mutation or mental illness, not how nature is supposed to work. And I think this is not reflective of the natural world. It's aspirational and based on a value system. So just because one aspect of the natural world is less effective at some biological imperative, so in terms of like fat people fleeing from danger, for example, doesn't mean that this doesn't or shouldn't exist. If the natural world has any rules, it's diversity and change, not perfection. So I think this idea of an optimized ideal body free of defect sounds an awful lot like eugenics. And I also want to note that a lot of these natural diets or natural lifestyles, they may be great, but we are so many thousands of years away from the advent of agriculture. We just don't have a personal conception of what this is even like. Like, this is a fantasy, not our current reality. There are very few people today who live outside of agriculture or industry. When we judge someone's fatness, we're also judging their moral value. So I don't think in our society and cultural context, you cannot split fat judgment from morality judgment. So if you say,
Really?
I don't think fat people are bad, I'm only judging their health, that doesn't really work because health is not a morally neutral concept.
What?
I think we've seen that with COVID-19, where someone gets sick, they get a positive test result, and it's not just, oh, what can I do to help, but it's what did they do wrong?
Dude, that was entirely created by people on your side. People get sick. You are This is the ironclad law of woke projection in action. He is asserting that fat people are like that society believes that fat people are making a moral judgment or that it's morally bad to get sick. This only works. This point only works if you are a morally bad person for getting COVID, which of course we know that's not true. That was never true. People get sick. It's the way it is. That's life. It is what happens. And so he's conflating the two things. So he is the one that is making the moral judgment and demanding that other people make a moral judgment when in fact they just might be saying, "Dude, we just got sick. Like, it happens. Welcome to being alive."
And I think that comes from a fearful place of if I just do the right thing, then I can avoid disease, I can avoid death, I can avoid social rejection. And I think we see that with fatness too. So in like obesity alarmist discourse, fat and sick are seen as synonyms. So if you're
Obesity
fat, you got
alarmist
sick, and you must have
discourse.
done something wrong to get sick. And then I think it gets really tricky to support fat bodies because you've got this sort of panicked idea of if you support them, you have blood on your hands by encouraging rising levels of deadly obesity. I want to talk about diets a little bit. I think it's a similar point. We attach moral value to certain foods or eating habits. And I think by labeling specific foods as good or bad, the leap to declaring people who consume bad foods as bad people becomes very easy. And fat people are assumed to be the primary consumers of unhealthy foods. Um, I don't think diets are generally a neutral quest for health. Not saying it's anything like wrong with them if that's what you want to do, but they are strongly motivated by a desire to look different. Research has found that people are more motivated to limit their caloric intake and exercise if they believe that they will look, quote, better. When they stop believing that their appearance will change, they lose motivation. In brief, for this section, I think that we understand that the way we treat fat people isolates and harms them, and we want to avoid those outcomes. So we choose to believe that fat people have earned their fate and that with the right behavioral changes, we can avoid the same. Fatness is a site of anxieties about death, disability, and social rejection. Is losing weight or having fitness goals bad? No, it's your body, it's your rules. Of course not. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. What I am challenging is the following assumptions that all fat people are not healthy because they are fat, that health is a moral obligation, that weight and health are one, in a direct relationship to each other, and two, the direct result of personal choices, and that any thin person is healthier, happier, more capable, etc., than any fat person. So let's talk about moving forward. What do we do now? What does this look like in higher ed? I think a good place to start is ourselves. So when you look at the fat on your own body, what words come to mind and what emotions come to mind? What does being fat mean to you? And I've included a picture of a fat woman who's driving with some pictures around or some words around her. So when you see a fat person, what comes to mind emotionally? What words really jump out at you? How fat is too fat? So I've been asked questions before about like, what about very fat people? What about quality of life? I think this is tricky as student affairs professionals because in a way our jobs ask us to make judgments about how well a student's life is going so we can respond to perceived problems. And I think the reason this approach gets used on fat people is because of this pervasive belief that fat is a choice. So we don't approach fatness as what it is, which is a mostly immutable part of a person's existence and a social category that's oppressed. I also want us to bear in mind that our perceptions about very fat people are often determined by the stereotype portrayals we get in the media, not through people we actually know. So to this point, I just want to ask, how do we decide for another person if their life is worth living as it is? And I'll just leave that there. At what size do we withhold respect and support? And I would ask, what's the intended purpose of doing so? So, like with other identities, think about social
Who's
pressures that
talking about
say that
withholding
people need
hang
to
on,
get.
hang on, hang on. Who's talking about withholding respect and support? I mean, at some point, you are not able to live any sort of life that has equality. And anyone that has watched My 600-Pound Life knows exactly what I'm talking about. At some point, these people are not able to have any quality of life. They're not able to get out of bed. They don't want to get out of bed. They don't want to leave the house. Like, and it's not about like no one is saying that you withhold love and respect for these people, but I think that people who love them will want them to will support them in trying to change and losing some of the weight. No one says they need to become 120 pounds and be a supermodel. Okay, no one's saying that. But like sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to help them make a decision that's going to make their lives better. And if someone is so heavy that they can't get out of bed, that they can't leave the house, that they aren't experiencing anything of what life has to offer, they're just spending all day eating. That's not a good it's not a loving thing to leave that, to not say anything. It's not a loving thing. I mean, this guy seems well, yeah, guy. This guy seems to think that allowing a person, just like encouraging a person to do whatever they want with their life, regardless of what that thing is how you show love and respect. And I disagree. I fundamentally disagree. Now, I'm not going to harangue a person into losing weight, but like to say that you don't love and respect and support them, I think is really taking it a step too far. That's very insulting.
Get rid of as much fatness, gayness, blackness, etc., as possible in order to have success, happiness, health, etc. And what sort of working relationship can we realistically form with someone if we also experience disgust or rejection towards their
There is
body?
sparkle in
So
this beer.
your students who are very fat have
It's a
experienced a
shimmer.
lifetime of this discrimination, so are likely very attuned to those very small little body language cues that indicate that you don't feel comfortable with their physical presence, and that will likely come across in your interactions with them. And I would ask how you think this impacts their experience with college. So if my advisor is always leaning away from me because I'm very fat and they're not comfortable with that, how are things going to go for me? A piece of advice would just be that we all do our own research on diet, weight loss, and fitness science. I'm going to recommend some books at the end because combing through all of this ourselves, it's difficult on purpose, right? So there are people who have made this easy for us. I would caution us to question the author's credentials. A lot of people who will write some very famous reports are not experts on obesity. Funding sources, limitations, methodology. I think we've gone over that pretty well, that there's a lot of confounding variables that just aren't really considered in a lot of studies, and that's worth noting. Okay, so the next step would be behavior, challenging our own behavior. So I would sort of ask if our go-to water cooler conversation is our latest diet, what's the impact of that? And when we talk about our own weight, what are we communicating to others? So unfortunately, we don't have time for me to do like an interactive piece, but I'll give 3 examples and then some possible responses for you all to consider. So one example would be a student or a colleague loses weight. How do you respond? One option would be to congratulate and compliment them, tell them how good they look, how much better they must feel. You could start rumors. Is it for the wedding? Are they sick? You can check in with them in general, just see how they're doing. Or you could ignore it, like mind your own business. I won't say which one is right or wrong. I'll say from my experience of someone who I had a bad relationship to eating, and that was tied up to a lot of things. And so I lost a lot of weight. And so being at a really low place in life and having people say, "Oh, you look so good," didn't help me in that situation.
Brent, I don't know why you're engaging with this asshole on Twitter. Like, I mean, you can do whatever you want. Okay, this has nothing to do with the presentation at all. This is just me yelling at Brent in the middle of a presentation. I don't know why you're engaging with this asshole on Twitter, Brent. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, so a student says some variation of like, "I'm so fat. What do? You can either deny it. You can say, no, you're not, and disagree with them. You could go aggressive chaos mode and say, so what are you going to do about it? You can reflect back what you're hearing. So does body size matter to you a lot, or this idea bothers you? Or you can just ignore the comment and move on. And my last example is if a student wants to work on a weight loss goal with you, what do? You could either refer them to the recreation office on campus. You could dig a little to try to find out why the student is bringing this up. Why is this a goal that they have? You could acknowledge that you're not professionally qualified to work on weight loss goals, or you could agree to coach them through weight loss.
Fat
Okay, so my final
liberation. Excellent.
section, this is people to follow, things to check out if you want to learn more.
Oh, good. More
There's some
presentations.
resources, voices from fat people. I do want to note that not everyone in the following slides identifies as fat, but all of them are engaged in body justice in some way. Photography for me, I think, has been really important. So the Adipositivity Project has been run for, I don't even know how long. It's been over a decade easily at this point by Substantia Jones. And Sugar McD, pictured right, is a queer photographer who mostly does portraiture of fat people. And here is some of Substantia Jones' artwork. I think something that she does, which is really cool, is she does portraits of fat people in love, which challenges some of these stereotypes that fat people are lonely or miserable. Yoga, we actually have some great local resources. So Jessamine Stanley is based out of Durham. She has a website, so check her out. There's her handle underneath her portrait. We also have the Guilford Foundation in Greensboro. They run a queer and fat positive yoga on Instagram Live called Rainbow Yoga Live. So that's something to check out. There are too many books to put in here. I know this is a lot of information, but books I have found are some of the best resources for this type of information. Google is not very reliable. Fearing the Black Body or the Racial Origins of Fat Phobia. If you're particularly interested in the intersection of race and anti-fat bias, this book just came out, very like 2019, so that's a great one. There's one by Aubrey Gordon, who is the person behind Your Fat Friend. She came out with a book last year. I have it right here. This is not paid. This is not paid at all. I actually haven't read it, but I'm very excited to read it, and it just came out. So there's a lot of really cool work that is coming out on the topic.
This isn't
if you want me
paid.
to
He's
send
at
you this
100
reading list, I'd
views
be more than
and
happy to.
over a year.
And I really like
not
podcasts.
paid.
So Friend of Marilyn has been going on for a very long time. So that's kind of like your old school staple of the fat lib field. Maintenance Phase just came out and I highly recommend it. It is extremely well researched. Yeah, it's just a great show. And the Fat Lip is actually, I think she's phasing out, so it's just archival at this point.
Are they saying that Friend of Marilyn is like Minnesota Public Radio, NPR? Minnesota Public Radio is super woke. All of public radio is super woke, but like they're one of the top woke.
And that's what I have. Thank you very much. There is my email. So feel free to contact me if you want to know more.
Well, not as much porn as usual.
Does anyone have any questions?
Let's see if there are questions. Not the most pornographic Fat Studies presentation I've ever watched. Just slightly pornographic.
I know the chat's been blowing up, but I haven't. I've been talking so much.
Blowing up. There's probably like three things in there. Are there any questions from the chat? Probably not.
Okay, I see some recommendations in the chat. Awesome. Yeah, thank you all so much. This has been great. I'm mostly impressed with myself at keeping it under 50 minutes.
These people always talk about themselves when they're doing a presentation, which you should never do, by the way. It's very distracting for the audience.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. Well, I hope you all have beautiful Fridays. Enjoy
this is not live. This is not a spy stream. We got to start rebooting spy stream. Is this it? Is there anything else? I don't want to give up too soon because he might say something insane.
Nice. Thank you, everybody. Yes, Alicia's Instagram.
It's always when we're about to quit that they say the truly insane things.
Yeah, I believe she was a UNCG counseling grad, so shout out to UNCG.
Oh, well, that's weird, Shannon. We're gonna do spy stream again. Don't worry. I'm rebooting a bunch of stuff. I'm pretty sure that's it. I mean, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. If we're being really honest about it, I thought this was going to be way worse. The last fat studies thing we watched was like
Well, I'm for real about emailing
mind-bogglingly
me, so
awful.
I think Caitlin can. It looks like
I mean,
you're
this was
gonna
bad,
close this
but
out.
like,
But yeah, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lou. You've had a lot of really great things shared in the chat, so it's really cool to look through. But I thank you all so much for attending.
you know what I mostly notice? I'm pretty sure it's over. You know what I mostly notice about these people is they're all emotionally stunted. Has anyone noticed that in the course of like happy hour? These people are almost always universally emotionally stunted like teenagers. And that's especially true when there's trans people involved. They're almost always completely emotionally stunted in like around about like 12, 13, 14 years old. So weird. Well, guys, that is our happy hour presentation for today. A little short today. That's okay though. We because we're getting the weekend started. Again, thank you so much for coming to happy hour. Please mount that like button on the way out the door. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I did just launch a new episode of the Actively Unwoke podcast today. It's all about how they're actually mandating wokeness in medical school now, which is probably something we should all know. They're mandating woke social justice training as part of a medical school education, as part of a residency, and as part of mandates for faculty members. So, yay! Medicine's going woke. But guys, if you enjoyed the show, I hope you consider joining my locals. It helps support the work I'm doing. I cannot do this work without people supporting it in locals. I would really like to get some new paid subscribers into it. So guys, you can help me out by heading over to kb.locals.com and you can sign up as a member for $5 a month. You can also sign up for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift. My locals members do get exclusive perks to include 2 Zoom calls with me every single week and the rest of the community where you can talk about whatever you want and hang out with amazing people. And if you haven't been to one of our community Zoom calls yet, I definitely encourage you to come. They're awesome. They revive my faith in humanity. That is not a joke. I really like them and I think you will too. We also do book club. We do bitchcraft. We have a supporter only Discord. Lots and lots of perks that are available for becoming a member of my locals community. You can do it for $5 a month or more if you want to. You can do it for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make that one-time gift right there. And all of that helps out. And I also want to encourage everyone to check out the Actively Unwoke audiobook. You can also check out the hardcover and Kindle edition, but definitely want to encourage people to check out the audiobook. I had to push outside my comfort zone to record this audiobook. I didn't want to do it. I was actually encouraged by many members of my locals to just suck it up and record the damn audiobook. I think it came out pretty well. I'm really happy with it. If you've not yet used your Audible credit to buy something far less interesting than my book, that is definitely available on Audible right now. Make sure you pick up your copy. And of course, please, please, please help us spread the word about this event that we're doing with Gabrielle Clark on August 2nd and August 4th. It is a 2-part series for parents and schools. If you are a parent, you need to come to this. You really do. You need to hear what happened with her daughter. You really, really, really do. It is insane. And the most insane part about it is that it's happening to kids every single day all over the country, and their parents don't know what to do. And so we're going to help out their parents by teaching them exactly and precisely what to do. You can find out more information about this at activelyunwoke.com/events. It's also on the homepage if you just go to activelyunwoke.com. Make sure you sign up for it. Make sure you share out with your friends and family. And let's get as many people as possible into this training so that we can actually help people instead of just complaining on the internet. Let's actually do something about it. All right, guys, I'm gonna go get my weekend started. And thank you for hanging out with me. Take care and have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you soon.